Hi, I'm Rebecca Morrison, author of The Blue Dress. I'm an essayist, I'm a recovering lawyer, and I am now an author of a middle grade novel, but I think it's a book for all ages about a 13-year-old Iranian American, an immigrant that has recently come to America, and she struggles really with a mother-daughter relationship. Her mother wants her to be thinner because of the mother's own reasons of what it means to be a woman, to have value, to have power. It's about beauty, it's about what the body looks like. And so they struggle together to understand each other. And she has other 13-year-old issues at school, belonging, feeling different because of her ethnicity, and wanting the things that a lot of us want to be seen and the things we do to be seen. Sometimes they're not great, and she learns that lesson.
Yeah, I love that. What is the story of this book? Like, how did it come to be? I know a little bit about it personally, just because I know you through Sue Shapiro's classes, but I would love for you to talk about that because it didn't start off as a middle grade book, right?
No. Yeah, my story's a little different. I started writing about 5 years ago, and I started taking classes. So I was really doing everything off the cuff, like writing pieces, sending it to publishers, not knowing really how to do it. And I just kind of published a couple things. I had a viral piece in HuffPost about being an immigrant. And then I wrote a couple things about me and my mom, a tiny love story, which went into New York Times, and Washington Post accepted a piece about me and my mom. And then I took Sue's pitch class, which was fantastic, Sue Shapiro's pitch class, and really honed the how to pitch a piece. And she had said during that class that she was having a panel in New York. And I had started writing a memoir. I think I'd mentioned it to her. And so her publishing panel, I thought, this is a great opportunity. I live in the DC area. I jumped on a train that Friday morning, went up just Friday night just to be part of her, in the audience of her panel, publishing panel. And there were great people on the panel. Pernoy was with Little Brown, and he was fantastic. Anyway, so I go there, and after the panel, I meet Joy Peskin, who is with FSG, Macmillan's imprint FSG for young readers. And I was just talking to her about, after the panel, what I write. I said, yeah, I write about mother-daughter disordered eating, that struggle of body struggle, which I've had my whole life, and coming to terms with that. And she said for me to email her. I emailed her a couple of my pieces, and in the weeks that followed, I told her I was writing a memoir. She suggested that I turn kind of my story into a novel for teen girls, which teens generally, which makes sense now so much, but at the time I thought, do I want to do this? And I gave it a shot. She actually was really my guardian angel. She did a lot. For somebody she didn't really know, this publisher, this big time publisher said, send me a synopsis of what you think the story would be, the first 20 pages. And even though she didn't, it didn't go anywhere from there beyond her guidance, she did say she believed in my story. And she said the story was good and to keep going. She said, write it, come back to me in a year with a full book. And I basically did that. I just dropped everything. I kept publishing pieces because I love it, but I wrote this book in a year. I just put it all down. I had a lot of it from my draft, pieces of it from my memoir that I was thinking of doing. And in the meantime, I had a couple of other viral pieces in Today and Washington Post, and agents, two agents contacted me, and one for children's books, one for the memoir, and I signed with them. And when I finished the book, my wonderful agent, John Cusick, we submitted exclusively to that same person, Joy Peskin, and I was really thrilled that they decided to buy the book.
That's amazing. That's like kind of a fairy tale story. That's really cool.
Yes, it is. It is. I'm very lucky. And I think in a lot of ways, I was building up to writing the story like a lot of people that write memoirs. My whole life, I've been wanting to tell this story since I was young. And I never thought it could happen. Honestly, before 5, 6 years ago, I never thought I'd be a writer or could be a writer. And I say this, but I thought as realistic as me saying I want to be an astronaut at 50 years old. It just didn't seem realistic because I didn't know anyone in that world. I didn't know the possibilities of it. Uh, but then the pandemic hit and I lost my legal contracting job and I had nothing to do. And I thought, if not now, when? And if not, me, why not me? Let's just try it. And then I really gave it a try. I threw myself completely into it.
Do you still practice as a lawyer? Just curious.
I do very little, but I do. I have a client that I've been with for 25 years. And so I still do work for them, but that might be, slowly ending at some point.
Are you still working on the memoir too? I've heard that some people do sort of both, like two versions of their story.
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not working on a memoir, but I am working on an adult novel, a coming of age, you know, long history of this woman's life that is loosely based on things happened to me. And I've written a first draft already, and I'm working on it with some hope that I can put it out in the world at some point in a couple years. Hopefully, you'll be able to, get your hands on it. Who
That's
knows?
awesome. I love it. I think it's so fun to write in like slightly different genres and,
Yes.
experiment in the different story structures. I want to talk about the Blue Dress, like the book and like just things that you chose inside of it.
Yeah.
Really love the character Carmen, and I wanted to know like, how you chose your different kind of characters, and the ways that they foil each other is so interesting,
Thank
um,
you.
especially because, I love that Carmen is from like her family is from a different culture too, but it sort of like offers so much of a kaleidoscope of experiences in that middle school area. And for me,
Yeah.
I work in a middle school. I'm a speech pathologist. And so in the middle school where I work, it's like very diverse. So it's really kind of cool to read your book and like, just see how it actually plays out in in real life too.
Thank you. I love that. Wow. I'm so moved. Um, Carmen, this is a great story. One of my best friends from high school, I went to an all-girls Catholic boarding school in California. Her name is Nineveh Caligari. She is a national education expert and advocate and author and lots of amazing things. She was CEO of a great company that helped young people get jobs, Enterprise for Youth. And she was visiting me with her daughter, whose name is Nineveh Carmen. And I was talking about, I'd written 20, 30 pages, and I was talking about this Yasmin, the main character, 13-year-old's best friend. When I was in middle school, I had a best friend named who was Indian. And I thought I loved her. The two of us were in the library together all the time. We had no other friends. But and Nineveh was like, wait a minute, what about me? You've known me since I was 14. And I thought, that's true. I have a lot more reservoir kind of feel for Nineveh, who is from Mexico. And so I based basically this character on one of my best friends. And I love the name Carmen, and it just happens to be her daughter's name. And her daughter were my beta readers. So they helped me craft kind of like the idea of this and make sure it was as authentic as I could make it.
Love that. That's so cool. I think that like that's one of the most fun things about fiction is that you can, kind of collapse these things that you've experienced into, these cool characters. I really like Carmen a lot. I love her family. I love that she loves to bake and watch the Great British Baking Show, and that, is something that me and my kids do. So it like made me so
Oh, I
happy.
love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
I was like, my kids need to read this because it's so modern, and that's one thing that I wanted to talk to you about. And I've also heard from Joy Peskin and Sue Shapiro's panels that with this kind of YA or middle grade work that if it's anything that's sort of before now, it's considered like historical fiction.
It's
Um,
true. And this was hard for me.
yeah.
And Joy told me the same thing. And right off the bat, she told me that that's what I should do when I was working on it, when I met her in the weeks after. And I thought, how am I going to do that? I know my story, which is decades ago. And I ended up, this is really funny. I, um, I did research, but at the same time that this was happening, I got a hip replacement. My surgeon happened to be Iranian, and he had just come here a short time ago, and he had daughters. And I remember in our like meetings, I would ask him about what was it like? What are he came here for? I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he said, for the opportunities for his girls. He came to America, and so that helped because I needed to kind of see what are they doing now. Of course, I did research also, but putting it in present was challenging for me. I had to really see like what are kids doing at that age.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking a lot about that because I imagine that immigration, people immigrate for very different reasons at different
Yeah.
time periods. And so I was very interested in that part of the story too. I also, when I think about my own childhood, I've always had like a hard time like conceiving of the idea of putting it in the present because of the technology. And there's like a lot of texting in your book, which I love. I love seeing text messages in books. It's like my
Oh,
favorite thing.
oh, good. Again, I was like, well, how am I gonna, I don't understand TikTok. Am I gonna put all that stuff in? And I really didn't want to. But texting is something like that's how we all communicate, and for sure. Oh, I didn't say this. I have a neighbor who has a from Pakistan, and the Pakistani daughter, who was, I believe, 11 at the time or 12. I asked if I could go on walks with her and ask her about school and things like that. And she's so wonderful. So she was a resource to me, and in addition to a couple of other friends' daughters, who I thank in the back of the book. But I remember she said to me, "Yeah, my best friend. I'm way older than her, 6 months or something like that." And I thought that was the funniest thing, and I put it in the book about how Carmen and Yasmin are. She's like, "I'm so much older than her." Uh, when you're 13, that makes a big difference. But she helped me because I would ask like, do people do this? Do your friends do that? Yeah, it was important to like kind of get it right. But that is a good age because I can stay away from some social media in the book. There are especially immigrant families, but I don't know, other families too, where parents are very strict about social media at that age.
Mhm. Yeah, I've actually noticed that kids are way more innocent than we seem to think they are. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like social media's presentation of what kids do is very different from what kids in real life do. Like,
Hmm.
most of the kids that I work with, they, occasionally they'll bring up social media, even in high school. But most of the time, I mean, video games, they'll play a lot of video games. I
Yes.
hear a lot about Fortnite and stuff like that. But
Yes.
for the most part, they're like, oh, I went to the mall with my friends. I hear that all the time. And I'm
I
like,
love
still? People go to the
that's very funny.
I
Yeah.
know. I
I
asked
love that.
the other day, I was like, so what do you actually do there? Like, because when I used to go to the mall,
Correct.
we had pagers. And so we spent a lot of time like paging people and waiting by the payphone in the mall or like going to the arcade. So
It's
I
very
was,
fun.
no, surely they don't do that. They don't. They just like get an orange Julius and like hang out.
Which is what we kind of did. That's what I did at the mall when I was in Vancouver, Park Royal. Shout out to Park Royal. My mall. Um, yeah, I mean, I have two boys, so a lot of this is based on me and the young people that I talked to during this time. Um, my boys really were not on social media because they were playing video games. And so they were on whatever the video game, communications method is. Now
Mhm.
it's like Discord or I don't know, some other
Yeah.
things. But neither of them were on Instagram, absolutely did nothing on TikTok. I mean, they were interested in video games, that's all. So I had to figure out what would a girl do? What would she want? Um, But a lot of, and understandably, some of my friends who have daughters the same age are very careful about social media for their girls. And it's not easy because you go to school. I remember my son, we were a little bit strict, and he did not have a phone when 95% of his friends had phones. And they did a presentation at school for their class, rules of how to deal with your phone. And he's like, "Why am I here? I don't even have a phone." And then eventually I felt bad, but and we gave him a phone and we had rules. I think it makes a difference to try at least. I don't know.
Yeah,
It did for us.
it's so hard. My kids right
It's
now,
so hard.
yeah, I have a 10-year-old, an almost 14-year-old, and a 16-year-old, and I have to like delete social media accounts all the time, and
It's hard. It's really hard. And girls and boys, I think, are different. I don't know. I had boys, and I feel bad for my friends who have girls because their friends are all on there, and you don't want them feeling isolated either. So it's a tough line to walk. This
Mhm.
really is.
Yeah, totally. And in the book, I was thinking a lot about this like difficulty with socialization. I think often lately, like the last like year, my brain has really been like focusing on like girlhood and like what that is and means and how that's changed over time or not changed. Like it's sort of
Yeah.
just been like my obsession. And so of course I was thinking about that and just like the ways that we are trained to like politic socially. And
Yeah.
they happen in your book, like this sort of like friend maneuvering and like who's an enemy and when do we understand that they're just like us and all of
Yeah.
these things. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about sort of that part of the conflict in your book.
I loved that because it felt so deeply personal to all human existence, wanting to be seen at a different level. Like I have, in the book, Yasmin has a best friend, and Carmen and Yasmin have this sweet relationship, but Yasmin still wants to be seen in a way that is beyond her best friend. She wants to be popular. She wants to kind of see what that world is like. And all the pressures of being different make her do some things that are destructive. But for a short time, she gets to see what that world is like. And I don't know, I kind of related to it. I think navigating the world of popularity or friendship, what friendship even means, loyalty, kindness, cruelty, all of it is part of our, kind of school experience, but human experience, I think, too.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And, just thinking about like being with middle schoolers, I'm a speech pathologist, so I have the chance to kind of like be hardcore with kids in a way that teachers can't be, can't be. So if I ever hear them like excluding people, like I get like really like, oh, let's talk about what that person's life is probably like.
Yeah,
I
good
get
for
like
you.
so
That's
hardcore.
that's awesome. That's great.
Because like
It's not,
yeah, it's terrible. It's a horrible
yeah,
experience.
yeah, yeah. And people are cruel.
Yeah.
People and the thing is because especially in middle school, I think young people are just trying to figure out what it means to be a human, what it means to be a social animal. What can you say? How far can you go? How cruel can you be and still, you know, be okay with yourself and still get what you want?
Hmm.
The tension and all of this stuff. And the teachers, middle school teachers, amazing. That's a hard thing to navigate and to be mentors and teachers and friends to these kids. I know my kids had great teachers, and I am so grateful um, and admire teachers enormously. Anyone working with young people, especially in schools, is just those are the people that are helping develop our humans for this earth.
I agree. And I super bow down to teachers because they do it like they have way harder jobs than I do. I just pull my kids in for 30 minutes. So, and then they go off.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I
Great.
love
Um, but one of the things that I work on and that I saw in your book is just this idea of like perspective taking. And I noticed that the main character, she takes the perspective of so many people in different ways, like the father, the mother, the past, the present, Carmen, the other girls in the school. And like the way that that kind of moves is really kaleidoscopic and cool. And as I was reading it, I was thinking like, you know, I'm so glad this is in the book. It seems like I think that I've read a lot of middle grade books that are just really sort of one story. Like they don't go into other people's ideas about what happened. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about just like how you kind of included, sort of a broad story of what happened before they came to the United States and all these other little areas that just open up into her story.
Thank you for noticing that. That's an element of the memoir becoming a novel for teens.
Mhm.
I, in a memoir, you want to tell kind of a broader, more complex story and letting the reader know kind of the why people do the things they do. And I really wanted to put that in for the mother who at first, we might not understand, we might dislike, but she's trying to do the best she can, and she has a backstory that brings her to that spot. And for Yasmin, the main character, to see and find out the backstories of these people, her then the popular girl who becomes her friend and then has some issues after, to see her story too. Um, I think that's what creates empathy in human beings, to see other people's side. And it's not always easy to do that, but I love that. I love to show that that if you dig a little bit deeper, if we have a little bit picture of what's going on behind the scenes of these, the mean girl or the mom that's too hard on you, or other people's moms, other people's stories, the nerdy kid, the popular kid, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that they're not just villains. There's something more, which is
Oh,
so
right.
important. Yeah.
And you know what's so funny? The crush in the book I based on a crush I had on is a real person, and he used to wear in the book he wears cowboy boots, and that's all real. That's why I say the story, so much of this book, and I don't know, what in my future what books or are going to happen or not. But this book is everything because so many elements of it are my real story.
Mhm. That's so cool and so fun. And a big part of the book has to do with eating and like sort of that tension around weight and all this stuff. And you
Yeah.
wrote a really amazing piece in Huffington Post recently about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's returned, like this sort of emphasis on like weirdly skinny.
Super thin.
Yeah.
Ultra thin. Yeah. That HuffPost piece, I got a lot of people reaching out to me, professors at universities, actresses, psychologists, therapists, saying that they would share the piece with their communities, thanking me for writing it. Um, I had disordered eating. I know, I've been struggling and fighting this issue most of my life. I believe that it's important to talk about kind of what influences there is in the media. Everybody has a right to the autonomy of their own body. And I tried to be really thoughtful about how I mentioned celebrities in the piece, but there is evidence of a crisis in our country with the this influence of trying to be super thin because of the drugs that we have now that are life-saving, but also can be destructive to young people when they see this ideal of being not just healthy thin or healthy norm, regular or healthy chubby or whatever. But it has nothing to do with health. It has to do with that look being the ideal. And so crisis centers, mental health centers, eating disorder centers are filling up with this.
Yeah, I loved your piece and I loved how careful you were in it, because I think that I've written for Huffington Post too, and before I wrote for them,
Yeah.
I really didn't like go in and read all of the pieces. I would occasionally read pieces that came across my news
Mhm.
just like everywhere else, right? It's
Yeah.
like you can't read everything all the time. And a lot of the pieces that I had read back in the day were really just not as careful. And I really appreciated like how kind you were to the even the celebrities that sort of seemed to like inspire the piece. And I had a really similar experience as you. I think we saw Wicked like on the same day because I saw your Facebook post about it. Um, and I like it was like you were in my brain because I was just sitting there with my child who, is in a wheelchair and has had like a full spinal fusion. And so she like her body is it's just a whole thing, like she can't do a lot of the things that people would do to like change whether where what their weight is. And I'm always concerned about how she's reflecting on these things. And we're sitting there and she loves Wicked and she's like singing along. And I was just like, like I like, when you could see like the rib
Yeah,
cage here, I was
yeah,
struggling. I was like remembering the like heroin chic years
yeah.
and all that stuff. And so I really appreciated that you wrote it and that it went viral and that everyone was reading it because it's like sort of like nip this in the bud.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you so much. I think I mentioned this on social media. I was obsessed with writing that. I wrote it on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and I mean, I could not wait to send it to an editor. And I had to stop myself. I said this because I'm like, am I going to send this on Thanksgiving to editors? No. And I asked a friend of mine who's an editor at a big publication. I just texted him and I said, what do you think? He said, I would wait, but you can do it, but I'd wait because a lot of people are off. And I just thought about that piece and researched it. And Monday morning after Thanksgiving, I just was like, please take this. Those are the pieces that work for me, that are I have to, I care about it so much that I do the work to get it to a place where I'm so proud of it. And I'm really happy. It really went very far and wide, and reached the numbers were pretty large also.
That's awesome. And I love that it happened right before your book came out and how this book, gives such like a human experience to all of that. Like because the narrator is speaking from the first person and talking about like, should I do this? Should I do this? Like, do I eat? Do I not eat? Like, and this like kind of wanting to please the mother, but also resenting her, kind of that
Yeah,
balancing, I think is so important because I think for a lot of people who don't have that experience, like it's sort of like why would you ever do that? What is it like? Like what pressures are making you feel like you have to?
yeah.
Um,
And I really wanted to put in a realistic scene, which I had written already for my memoir, about the binging and the purging,
mhm.
which is not pretty. And it is very painful and it is embarrassing. But it's human, and a lot of girls are doing it. Uh, when I was writing the book, I talked to a middle school counselor, and he said almost every day he had people in his, girls especially, in his office that either had a friend that was struggling or they were struggling themselves. And it's happening at middle school levels. A lot of girls are doing it. And to see kind of what it looks like when you don't have any idea, I think is important so that we have empathy, but also that we can have a conversation about it.
I super agree. And I really appreciate that you wrote about it. I think
You.
it's so hard because like they're so young. Like they're
Yeah.
such
So
like
young.
little kids. I mean, by the time they're in eighth grade, something starts to shift and they kind of move into
Yeah.
this like
Yeah.
peacocky bigger kid land.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
the funniest thing I've ever
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
Um, but like, when they first come in, it's so funny. They're like so tiny, like they're little. And even in sixth grade, I'm seeing stuff like this. Seventh grade seems to be the worst time for every human. It's like the
That's so funny.
worst year.
Yeah. It's a rough time. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's like that liminal space where like it's just everything is crucial and you're small and big at the same time. I mean, it's such
Yeah.
a weird
Yeah.
experience. Um, but I really appreciate that. Okay, the only other question that I have, and oh my gosh, we're like doing amazing on time, is the structure of the book, I just wondered, like, did you just sort of have the idea of the structure? How did you decide when to start and when to end as far as like the time period in this character's life of this book?
Yeah, that's a great question. I, Joy mentioned like a 13-year-old would be good.
Hmm.
So at the story, and that's around the time my memoir started. Um, that's the time my memoir was, that was the backdrop of an adult experience at the time. Um, and I think it's exactly what you said. Seventh grade, being 13, and kind of the beginning of how these things start for girls was really important. Um, so that's how I started. And I actually initially started with a scene of her in the bathroom. And that was too much as the first scene. But I was like, oh, that's where I want to start because that's where the darkest thing happens. So I pushed that further out because of advice, great advice that I was given. And then I started with the scene with her and her mother and creating the blue dress, which again, my mother sewed me a blue dress. She didn't make it too tight, but she sewed me a blue dress. I have a picture of that dress. I drew it. I kind of painted it in for art class too. So I have all this stuff from when I was little, and it was a beautiful blue dress. Anyway, so I kind of had a structure already. And then the truth is, anyone that's written a book knows the amount of versions that this book went through is enormous. My husband was asking me, how many drafts of this did you do again? And I was at least, 15, 20. I don't know. Because you read it over and revise so many times. And I had a lot of great, I had beta readers. I had a development editor that, kind of gave me advice on developing the characters. And putting in story B was towards the end, the art contest and their love of drawing and art. I love that because I paint and I'm also a painter. So it was really fun putting in all elements of my life into one book. I loved it.